These two triangles, the 45-45-90 and the 30-60-90 triangle, will help you evaluate most of the critical angles in trigonometry. It's important that you understand how to recreate these triangles and can think of all the angles and sides in your mind. So let's start with the first triangle, the 45-45-90. It's also known as an isosceles right triangle. It has a hypotenuse of 1, and both of the side lengths are equal at the square root of 2 over 2 and the square root of 2 over 2. Also, the interior angles are both equal at 45 degrees. The 30-60-90 triangle has a hypotenuse of 1, and it has an angle of 30 degrees and an angle of 60 degrees, along with the right angle. Notice that the side opposite 30 degrees has a length of 1/2, and the side opposite 60 degrees has a length of square root of 3 over 2. Oftentimes, you'll be asked questions on the side lengths opposite or adjacent to an angle. I find it's easier to remember the side length opposite an angle, and then by default, I'll know the other side length. For example, if I'm asked what the adjacent side of 30 degrees is, and I've memorized that the opposite side equals 1/2, then by default, the adjacent side has to be the square root of 3 over 2, because there's only two side lengths in a 30-60-90 triangle. Similarly, if I'm asked what the adjacent side of 60 degrees is, and I know that the opposite side is the square root of 3 over 2, then by default, the adjacent side must be 1/2. Let's evaluate the 6 trigonometric functions of a 45-45-90 triangle. So we're going to look at angle theta, which is equal to 45 degrees, and we're going to evaluate the sine. The sine is the opposite side, square root of 2 over 2, over the hypotenuse, 1. And that simplifies down to just square root of 2 over 2. So the sine of 45 degrees is the square root of 2 over 2. The cosine of 45 degrees is the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse of 1, which again simplifies to square root of 2 over 2. The tangent is the opposite side, square root of 2 over 2, over the adjacent side, square root of 2 over 2. And that big fraction simplifies down to just 1. The cosecant of 45 degrees is the hypotenuse 1 over the opposite side, square root of 2 over 2. When we divide by a fraction, we multiply the numerator times the inverse of the fraction. So 1 over the square root of 2 over 2 equals 1 times 2 over the square root of 2, which is just the 2 over the square root of 2. But since we still have a radical in the bottom, we need to rationalize the denominator. In other words, we need to get rid of that radical. To do that, we can multiply the numerator and the denominator by square root of 2 over 2. And the result is 2 times the square root of 2 over 2. The 2's cancel in the numerator denominator, and we're left with the square root of 2. So the cosecant of 45 degrees is the square root of 2. The secant of 45 is equal to the hypotenuse over the adjacent side. So 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. Again, just like with the cosecant, that simplifies to 2 over the square root of 2. Rationalize the denominator by multiplying by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. And we get 2 times the square root of 2 over 2. The 2's cancel, and we've got the square root of 2 left. The last one is the cotangent of 45 degrees, and that's just equal to the adjacent side, square root of 2 over 2, over the opposite side, square root of 2 over 2. And that big fraction just reduces down to 1, because any number over the same number equals 1. Now let's look at a 30-60-90 degree triangle and evaluate it at the angle theta equals 30 degrees. So the sine of 30 is equal to the opposite side, 1/2, over the hypotenuse, 1. And 1/2 over 1 is just 1/2. The cosine of 30 is equal to the adjacent side, square root of 3 over 2, over the hypotenuse, 1, which again is just square root of 3 over 2. The tangent of 30 is equal to the opposite side, 1/2, over the adjacent side, square root of 3 over 2. Again, we'll have to multiply the numerator times the inverse of the denominator to get rid of the fraction on the bottom. So 1/2 in the numerator times the inverse of the denominator, 2 over the square root of 3, and we end up with 2 over 2 times the square root of 3. The 2's cancel. We're left with 1 over the square root of 3. Rationalize to get rid of the radical in the denominator by multiplying by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And we end up with the square root of 3 over 3. The cosecant of 30 degrees is equal to the hypotenuse 1 over the opposite 1/2. And that simplifies down to 2. The secant of 30 is equal to the hypotenuse 1 divided by the adjacent side, square root of 3 over 2. Again, multiply by the inverse of the denominator, 1 times 2 over the square root of 3. We get 2 over the square root of 3. Rationalize to get rid of the radical in the bottom. And we end up with 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. And the cotangent of 30 is the adjacent side, square root of 3 over 2, over the opposite side, 1/2. Again, multiply by, take square root of 3 over 2 in the numerator, times the inverse of the denominator, 2 over 1. We get 2 times the square root of 3 over 2. The 2's cancel, and we're left with the square root of 3. Finally, in the 30, 60, 90 triangle, we're going to evaluate the other angle, 60 degrees. So the sine of 60 is equal to the opposite side, square root of 3 over 2, over the hypotenuse 1, which reduces to square root of 3 over 2. The cosine of 60 is equal to the adjacent side, 1/2, over the hypotenuse 1, which reduces to 1/2. The tangent of 60 equals the opposite side, square root of 3 over 2, over the adjacent side, 1/2. We're going to multiply by the inverse of the denominator, so square root of 3 over 2 times the inverse, 2 over 1, equals 2 times the square root of 3 over 2. The 2's cancel, and we're left with the square root of 3. The cosecant of 60 degrees is equal to the hypotenuse 1 over the opposite side, square root of 3 over 2. We're going to multiply by the inverse of the denominator, 1 times 2 over the square root of 3, and we're going to get 2 over the square root of 3. Got to get rid of that radical in the denominator, so we'll multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3, and we'll get 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. The secant of 60 equals the hypotenuse 1 over the adjacent side, 1/2. So 1 over 1/2, it simplifies to 2. And finally, the cotangent of 60 degrees equals the adjacent side, 1/2, over the opposite side, square root of 3 over 2. Multiply 1/2 by the inverse of the denominator. We'll end up with 2 over 2 times the square root of 3. The 2's cancel. We're left with 1 over the square root of 3. Get rid of the radical in the denominator by multiplying by the square root of 3 over 3. And we end up with square root of 3 over 3.